Kaede Hanju, known also as Maple, is a very simplistic airheaded goofball who has a huge thirst for curiosity. However, her curiosity also got her to be the most powerful menace throughout the entire world. Supposedly, since she didn't want to get hurt, she decided to max out her defense and become a literal walking cheating skill. Then you have her best friend, Shuramin Risa, known also as Sally. Unlike her airheaded friend, is the embodiment of the bright gamer who became a ninja with no type of defense. On a calm night, Risa suggests to her friend Kaede to play a game called New World Online. Kaede was saddened that her friend won't be able to join her in it right now because she has a life. I mean school, but she couldn't help but relent to her bestie's excitement. So she unboxed the game, wore the VR headset and logged into the exciting world of Sword Art Online. I mean New World Online. Before she could enter though, she picked the name Maple for herself as well as her main equipment. Given her concern about ever getting hurt, she decided to put her stats on the defensive side. Now with that out of the way, let the game start. Maple was happy with how the world looked. However, she was surprised to find out that she was so slow. Like way too slow. That's what you get when you sacrifice agility for defense. 5 minutes later, she comes up with the genius idea of fighting monsters for starters so she can level up. However, Maple didn't know where to start, so she asked some random blonde girl, Frederica, for some help with that, which she did. Once she's in the woods, she encounters her first enemy, a tiny little Chikorita looking like. Much to her surprise, the little monster's headbutt dealt no damage at all to her. It only took an hour of abs flexing to realize that her vitality doubled. The overjoyed Maple accidentally eliminated the tiny monster with a hit of her armor, but despite her level up, she still felt sad. After adding more points to her defense, it's time for Maple to encounter her new opponent, a bee that kept on throwing poison at her. Little did this bee know that the more attacks Maple gets, the more her defensive stats increase, and with that she started developing resistance to all sorts of poisonous attacks. Eventually, the little airhead tricked the bee into a trap, defeating it in the process. Of course, she got rewarded for this with an artifact that boosts her health regen. Now that she somewhat fell asleep, tiny monsters surrounded her and kept on attacking her with every little damage they could deal. Unfortunately enough for them, Maple woke up a few hours later. Despite waking up to learn that she gained the ability of meditation, she accidentally eliminated all her opponents while freaking out. Once she got back into the real world, she realized that it was so late into the night and that she hadn't done her homework yet. She just like yourself. The next day, Maple is back excited for more adventures on her own, until Risa is ready to play. Just as she wonders about where to get better clothes, she notices a stronger shield wielder. Unknown to her, however, the guy, Kirimu, figured out that she was the weirdo who'd been attacked by tiny monsters as she was sleeping. Good job, Maple. You made a good reputation starting your first day. Kirimu was kind enough to take her to the store where he got his armor, where he introduced her to the craftswoman who made his armor, who couldn't hold herself from having an ironic thrust at his sense of humor when she threatened to call the mods for kidnapping Maple. So after figuring out why Maple picked up the great shield style and adding her, and Kirimu told her about where she could get some loot. They couldn't help but worry that it might be very dangerous to her though after she left. Once she was in the dungeon, Maple eliminated tiny monsters there with ease, acquiring some more buffs and a new set of defensive skills, until she got to the master of this dungeon, a giant monster with 3 snakes that evaporated Maple's shield and dagger with a powerful poison that was even stronger for the newbie to resist. So she kept on using all of her health potions until she developed an immunity to poison. Just as she was figuring out how to beat the monster, she came to the conclusion to eat him alive. I guess it still worked in the end and got her loot, but still. After a brief math lesson with Maple, she logged off to inform Risa about her achievements. The latter though, who's a skilled gamer girl, is still itching to play the game. But before we get further into this, we have to talk about this app that made my father come back with the milk to try. Storyaverse, the place I'm currently reading one of my favorite short animated stories. A story that is exclusive to this app and you can't find anywhere else. A place where writers from across the world write their own unique stories. The best part is after you finish reading a paragraph, it gives you a visual animated version of what's happening to make you feel like you're actually in the story. Although, if the animated story is something like getting an actual life, don't bother visioning that, since you don't have one. From horror stories with intense music to get the thrill, sad stories that can be painfully relatable, and even anime stories, as I've said before, only written and animated on this app. As an anime fan, reading exclusive hidden animes is a gold mine. There are also many animation style, unlike other apps that only has one type of animation. This app has 2D, 3D, hand-drawn and more, with any type of genre you can ask for. comedy, mystery, fantasy, you name it. If you guys would like to check out Storyaverse, the app is available in the App Store for completely free, but to save you some time, I will leave it in the description. The next day, Maple did nothing usual other than grinding the game, where she gained a new set of skills, as well as eating some explosive bugs. Seriously, this girl is nasty. On her way to school, Risa got Kaede back into the real world after spacing out about what to do in the game, so naturally they kept on talking about this rip-off of Sword Art Online. Risa couldn't help but express her excitement to finish her exams so she could play. Back to the game, where Maple logged in again to take part in an ongoing event, where all the players gathering there were surprised by the presence of Kayaba Akihiko, Dorazo, the game's mascot, who, after a brief introduction to the event's rules, announced the event start. Now Maple, after sitting down and drawing whatever she was drawing, encountered her first opponent, which she eliminated with her shield easily. Just as she turned her back, 3 more enemies approached her, and she paralyzed them and eliminated them. Now to save you guys and me the trouble of going through all the details, Maple ended up abusing her ability to devour other players and defeat them easily for the next 3 hours of the event. But despite other players' complaints about how broken that ability is, she emerged to get the 3rd highest score in the event, much to her surprise. Understandably, Risa was taken aback by the news as well by Kaede's achievement. She also went as far as to turn down Kaede's effort to copy her playing style, since Risa has a style of her own. She suggested that they work as a duo though, since their play styles would make a perfect synergy. After a brief lag in her head, Kaede agreed in excitement. Once school is over, the duo logs in together for the first time. Risa made sure to let Maple call her Sally in-game. After a brief rundown of her character and another discussion of the shield she commissioned, Sally decided to rush outside to get the necessary ingredients to forge new materials and grind the game while they're at it. Much to her surprise though, Sally learned that her walking speed is way too much for Maple, so she concluded that she'll carry her as they discover this world together. A few hours after arriving at the cave where they needed to farm their materials, Maple couldn't help but be impressed at Sally, who acquired her first skill in fishing. Now after getting what they needed, Maple insisted that they stay a while longer to farm some more materials, so Sally relented and decided to do that through swimming. After merging back to the surface, Sally managed to get what they needed, and informed Maple that she found a large dungeon gate underwater too. Unfortunately for the air-headed girl, with her non-existing agility, she can't swim. So they reach a compromise where they head to this lake every day until she gets a high enough level to unlock the dungeon master's door. Eventually, Sally reached new heights that she could finally fight the monster. Despite the time limitation, she was determined to do it. Once inside, she engages in a tough fight with the monster, and she nearly drowns after the water level increases. That, as well as the powerful attacks from the monster, didn't mean anything to her though, as she managed to finally beat it despite all odds. After claiming her loot, Maple was impressed with how strong Sally is, only for their celebration to be interrupted by a new events declaration from Dorazo. One night, Risa and Kaede discuss their plans change after the nerfs made on the devouring ability, which will be usable for only 10 times per day starting the next patch. Much to Kaede's disappointment, but with a few encouraging words from Risa, the goofball is back in good spirits. After logging in, the duo started by looking around shops in the city in preparation to visit places they have yet to see. They just meet twin girls who are arguing about buying new weapons. Before they get to a local restaurant to eat some food, they end up having a brief discussion with the 2nd place winner of the last event, Dread, and 5th place winner, Drag. Much to Maple's surprise, Drag was a friend of Frederica, the blonde girl who helped her out on her first day. Despite being thankful for Sally's compliments, Dread couldn't help but express that his strength is nowhere close to that of the 1st place winner, Pain. Before they went, the boys recommended our duo girls to check on the northern forest after nightfall. So Sally took Maple and Ernest and rushed to their destination. It was a bummer though that the gamer girl was scared of virtual ghosts, even inside the house where they took shelter. The girls looked under the carpet and found a basement, where they found me after locking myself up there for ages writing scripts. Not just kidding, they found an old man tied up on a chair screaming from pain. Sally was too scared to think straight, but Maple, who's been an airhead, assumed that this guy must be a part of the quest, so she came up with the brilliant idea of using her health potions on him. Did that ease his pain? No, it doesn't seem like it. The scary Sally reluctantly uses her healing spell on the guy over and over until he's finally rested. Literally, much to the duo's surprise, they found a new spell that gave them agility. Before they log off, Sally takes Maple to an amazing place where there's a never-ending sunset. The sight was so relaxing that the duo couldn't help but play with water. And with that out of the way, they finally went to continue their journey to move to the 2nd floor. Maple did well in standing as the vanguard against the first few bosses. They still had to be ready for the dungeon's master though. Maple unleashed Hydra against it but to no avail, so Sally swiftly decided to switch tactics, leaving Maple to remain as a decoy for the monster, as she looked for vulnerabilities in him, where they found some success, as Maple ended up pulling up the big guns to finish off the monster. However, it made a last large explosion that knocked Maple unconscious for the rest of the fight, leaving Sally alone to deal with this menace. Using her agility, Sally skillfully dodged the monster's attacks as she was landing hers, concluding the fight in her favor once and for all. Once Maple woke up, the duo teleported to the second floor's plaza, where despite being disheartened by her performance, Maple was overjoyed to meet us there. She got even happier to learn that her requested shield was ready, which turned out to be pretty good. As for what to call it, she went with the name Snow White for some reason. And here I thought that I'm awful at giving names to begin with. Sally, who's been happy for her friend, decided to celebrate by taking her to a fancy restaurant where they ended up eating the stars. Their hair and eyes started glowing like the skies even. Now on the event day, the duo was happy to meet up with Kirimu in the plaza. Their discussion was cut short by another player, Mai, delivering a speech to motivate her guild members before the event. Suddenly, Darazu came in to inform them of the nature of the event and how long it would last, before starting the countdown for the beginning of the event. Will the duo win this event? Episode 4. Once there, Maple was amazed at the sight she witnessed. Sally, who's been excited about this event, made sure to keep their morale sky high to achieve their goal of getting 20 medals. Just as Sally kept on blabbering, she completely lost track of Maple. She found that she fell into a hidden passage underground where Maple discovered a dungeon in it, so she followed. After reaching the front gate of the dungeon master's door, they found nothing at first. Maple, who has been on high alert from the start, came immediately to defend Sally from the monster's attack. It turned out that this monster was a Pennywise. She got thrown away as she protected her friend after a failed attack, but she seemed to be fine. Now it's Sally's turn to move on the offensive. She threw everything she got at the clown until he finally turned to retaliate. Unknown to the latter, Sally was just a decoy, for Maple pulled out her Hydra to finish him off. And with that, Sally claimed 2 medals out of this quest. 18 more to go, girls. Once they're out of the domain, the duo walked to a snowy mountain, only to meet Kirimu and the others there. The boys were met with a hostile look from Sally, but they had no ill intentions. They were just struggling to find medals, but thanks to Maple, they struck a deal with her where they would get to clear the domain the girls were supposed to clear first. However, not too long after entering it, the domain reopened again, so the duo assumed that the boys got busted there and now it's up to them to clear it. They entered the domain with their guards up, just to be greeted with 2 icy boulders thrown at them. Reminds me of how the homies greet me after coming back from a long trip. It turned out that the boss of this domain was a huge bird, which welcomed them with a hail of ice attacks, which Maple was able to block without her shield. She only used her Devour ability once the attacks became increasingly threatening, only for Sally to go on the counterattack. With cover from Maple, they did a number on the bird, or so they thought, because the bird started using the ice inside the domain to pierce Maple's own armor, but thanks to using their abilities of meditation and heal, they were able to withstand the barrage. Now it was time for a counterattack if the duo wanted to put an end to this fight, so Sally started running like Keemstar, dodging attacks skillfully, while Maple did tank most of the damage from the bird. But even combining their attacks wasn't enough to take the monster down. The girls ended up playing Angry Birds now that the monster had become even more powerful than it already was, so much so that it broke through Maple's shield. Maple's cover knocked the bird down for a moment, and Sally was able to jump high up to get even more attacks. But just as the bird calmed down and its dark aura disappeared, it turned out that Sally used the Mirage technique. Now it's fully exposed for Maple to deliver her coup de grace, putting an end to this entire fight. Once they got to relax, Maple found out that she gained a new skill that allowed her to survive any lethal damage with 1 horsepower once a day. That made Sally so dismayed that she started spamming her healing spell on her friend. After picking up on some crafting materials and realizing that they can become chicks for keeping eggs of their incoming pets, the duo teleported outside the domain. Of course, the whole fight didn't go unnoticed by the game committee, who's been outraged that 2 newbies have cleared their bird, contemplating what they should do to prevent Maple from abusing her defensive stats. Back to our duo, who had been hiding while a random player took down another to get medals. Maple was scared at such a prospect. Sally, however, got excited at the prospect of testing her skills in a 1v1 battle. Just so they end up hatching eggs for the rest of the day and testing their ability to jump off of cliffs the next day. Much to their surprise, they found a medal right next to the dizzy Maple. I think we're forgetting something here, aren't we? Oh yes, it's the eggs that the duo are taking care of, where finally a turtle merged out of its egg, while a fox merged out of the other. So the girls are happy for the new pets they got, as well as the rings of bond that make their pets fight alongside them. That's borderline animal cruelty here, isn't it? Aside from that, Maple decided to call her turtle Syrup, while Sally named the fox Obero, to which the pets reacted positively to their names. Oh, Sally also informed Maple that Syrup is faster than her, so yikes, I guess. Now, of course, they couldn't continue their journey without having some Pokémon training for their pets. Starting the next day, however, the duo reaches out to an oasis in the desert, only to be greeted by a hostile player who's after Maple's medal. With the hostile reception, Sally pulled out her daggers in preparation for the fight. They proceeded to pursue each other at full speed, while Maple stood speechless in front of these developments. Once they reached an isolated place between the dunes, the samurai girl, Kasumi, tried to get Sally to be heat-struck. She was taken aback by the fact that she ended up attacking a mirage instead, a fact that left her exposed to Sally's attacks. The fight came to a halt from the shouting of a certain girl that is slower than her pet turtle. Yes, she couldn't even use her shield to ride the dunes properly. Maple's arrival got the situation so bad that her impact caused the sands to swallow everyone involved in the scene. Good job, goofball. This series would have ended here or become a documentary about those travelers who get lost in the deserts. But no, the girls found themselves in a dungeon, under the damn desert. Now that Sally and Kasumi woke up and had their guard up, they discovered that they were already shackled. As for Maple, wakey wakey sleepyhead, you caused a pandemonium and you still slept like there's no tomorrow. Come to think of it, I wish I could have that much peace of mind to cause a disaster and sleep it through as if nothing happened. After a brief self-introduction from all three, they agreed to hold a truce until they escaped their current predicament. Along the way, Kasumi seems to start having a change of heart towards the duo. She even allowed Maple to keep the medal she found. Once they reached a crossroad, Sally couldn't help but feel uneasy after sensing danger, so she hid with the other two inside a gateway, allowing a giant slug to pass over without noticing them. Kasumi was quick to realize that this slug wasn't a monster to be fought, but rather an obstacle set up for them to overcome. It didn't take much time for more of those creatures to show up from the other gateways inside the tunnel, trapping the girls in the process. Despite their best effort to escape with their dead weight, I mean Maple, they ended up being surrounded. The situation now seems grim, but Maple found one sliver of hope for them to escape, through a tunnel on the upper part of the cave. The hole was way too high for them to reach, but since they were running out of time, Sally used her leap skill, just as she was about to start to lose altitude. Kasumi used a technique of her own to get herself with the duo to the pass, creating a bond of friendship with them in the process. It didn't take them long to find a chest that broke them off of their chains, much to their relief, as well as a bunch of new loot that Maple and Sally insisted that Kasumi should take. As for the medals they found though, it was decided that one should be given to Sally and another to Kasumi since Maple got one at the entrance of this maze. Once they're back to the surface, the duo got to reconcile with Kasumi and add her to their friends lists before parting ways, for now. The more they advanced now in this event, they went through all sorts of adventures to get silver medals, from booby traps and haunted graveyards to fishing and sea diving. At the last location of which, Sally found that Maple was playing with a sleepy redhead boy. He introduces himself to Sally and despite her concern about her friend playing with a stranger, out of fear that he may rob her of her medal, she is taken aback by the fact that Kanade is only at level 5. We know that you're proud of the cubic puzzle you got from that old library, and we know that you're not proud of how weak you are, but please. Being a loser isn't something you should be bragging about. Despite being weak, he still has enough skills that he refuses to reveal their effects to the duo. After adding them, he offers them a book as a token of friendship, even though he refuses to tell them what is it useful for. Well, you've bloody done it, lad. I guess I was wrong about you. As the sun was setting, the duo reached an ancient ruined site that Kanade told them about. Thankfully, they managed to activate the fountain on that site, just to be teleported to another site underwater. Back to their defense, they go, just as they get attacked by a huge octopus. Maple was ready to destroy its tentacle, but that was just the first of the monster's many attacks. Thinking fast, Maple did what she could do best, summoning Hydra to get out of the site's shield and poison the water so much that nothing in it can live anymore, including the octopus. Surprisingly, the plan worked, and the girls got their rewards after being teleported to a beautiful coral and left. Despite the duo's happiness, other people were not pleased with their success. Of course, it's the Discord mods. I mean the game mods. Once they realize they're still 2 medals short of their goal, Sally decides to split temporarily from Maple so that she can protect the medals, while Sally does the dirty work herself by going through PvP mode. It didn't take her long to find 2 players, which she managed to swiftly defeat using her agility. Much to her disappointment though, she got nothing out of them, so she kept on grinding her way. Just as Syrup and Oboro defeated some tiny monster nearby. Girl, you remind me of those videos where people would bet their money on fighting chickens. Let's leave the airhead with whatever she's doing and take a look at Sally again, shall we? Since she's still on her trail of destruction, hoping she would get some medals, which she got her required to, and headed immediately back to Maple. The latter was happy that they finally got to meet their quota ahead of schedule, so she decided with Sally to rest in the cave for the rest of the day. They were met with a shadowy figure emerging from the shadows, but before Sally got the chance to skewer it, it turned out that it was Kasumi. Maple was happy to take her in, so she blocked the cave entrance with so much poison that repulsed all other players from entering. Now the trio kept on losing some games with Maple until the Dorazu came in to declare the end of the event. Maple was glad that she got to have a blast in this event. As for Sally and Kasumi, however, they were stunned by the new skill that Syrup learned, which transformed it into one of those giant turtles from Nat Geo TV, except that it can fly. Back to the real world. Phew. Finally, Kaede decided to touch some grass and go to school, where she met with Sally along the way. The latter couldn't help but warn her friend about slipping and having her gaming life leak to the real world. I mean, of course, you don't want to be called out as being stinky for refusing to shower to play a game for a week. Now, despite Kaede agreeing, she still fell asleep in class. She even panicked saying stuff about the game when she was woken up by her classmate, confusing herself, the teacher, and all of her classmates in the process. If you're thinking things stopped at that, then you ain't seen nothing yet, girl. She was about to retaliate against a classmate who unintentionally hit her in the corridor and got hit by a ball in the school gym after thinking she was having her shield until she realized that she needed a break from video games. 3 days later, she's back to the game again. Of course, Sally was there to greet her and tell her of what she missed out on for the past few days, including a firefly that, if captured, could grant one the right to buy a guild house. Maple got even more excited to know that Sally managed to capture one in the last few days. After a brief search for a good place, they found one inside a giant tree that they claimed was theirs. Now their next set objective was to get new members for their newly established members, to which Maple decided to invite Kasumi and Kanade for starters. Once the duo arrived at the plaza, they met with Kasumi and Kanade, who gratefully accepted the invitation. Kasumi made it clear that she was going to invite them to a guild if she ever joined one anyway. While this conversation was taking place, Iz and Kiramu happened to be passing by. The former was quick to know that Maple and the others were forming a guild, so she agreed to join with Kiramu after learning that Maple and Sally were leading it. Back at the guild's HQ, the members there voted for Maple to be the guild master, since she was the one to pick the location as well as all the members. Now with that out of the way, Kanade suggested that they need to find a name for the guild, to which after giving it a little thought, Maple settled on the name Maple Tree Guild. For the sake of this video, we'll call it MTG, since it reminds me of Uncle Roger's favorite food component. You know it, you love it, it's the MSG. A bit later, Maple took Kanade and Iz with her to a mine on her flying turtle. Now that the 3 of them had entered the mine, Maple made a cover for both her teammates who went ahead to collect much needed materials. Elsewhere, Sally has been fighting other monsters alongside Kasumi and Kiramu to get some artifacts to use, just as they kept on talking about how Maple influenced them. On their first meeting, the MTG Guild discussed the details of the upcoming 3rd event next week, as well as the much more important 4th event, which will be a guild competition. The members addressed the issue of their lack of participants for that specific event, and decided to get more members, as Kiramu suggested. There was one problem for Maple to face though: where are you going to find new members? Thankfully for her, Sally is always by her side, so she informed her of the board where other guilds post their recruitment offers. Disheartened by the lack of strong members offers on the 2nd floor, Maple decided to go back to the 1st floor to find people to recruit despite their strength, as long as they were fun to be around. During their search there, Maple couldn't help but overhear 2 twins talking about their rejections by other guilds. Do you guys remember the twin girls who were contemplating buying new weapons in the previous moments? Yeah, it's those 2, and Maple did remember them clearly, so she came in to invite them to her guild. At first, the twins, Mei and Yui, were intimidated, but after giving it some thought, especially after Sally's invitation to a cup of tea, they agreed to talk about it more thoroughly with Maple and Sally. Much to Maple's surprise, the twins had a very low agility that made them very slow, just like her. Now the twins were taken aback by this turn of events, so inspired by Maple, they agreed to join MTG. Before she took them to the second floor, Maple took the twins to a dungeon master for them to defeat, for them to get enough material to be on par with them for the incoming event. That boss turned out to be the deer they cleared before. Enthusiastically, Sally pulled off a cage bunshin no jutsu to distract it as Oboro breathed fire onto it, impressing the newbies. But as the deer regenerated and came to attack them in earnest, Maple devoured its attacks, leaving Sally to give it the coup de grace. Despite their excitement, the twins started having second thoughts about joining a strong guild like MTG, but thanks to Maple they still came with her to the guild's HQ, where they received a warm welcome from other members. Oh, they also broke the table with a tiny headbutt too. Episode 7. Now with the introduction out of the way, Maple took in the recruits to get used to their destructive strength by defeating a dungeon master. Wait, that's the one where Maple obtained Hydra, and they want to redo the domain once again now. Interesting. Once they're back to the entrance of the domain, Maple informs the twins that they'll be speed running the game to help them level up faster, and to ensure that the plan would go well, she gives them 2 poison resist potions. As for the results, yeah, it seems like there are lots of rolling and spinning brains now to even focus on fighting Hydra. I would be damned if they get to clear it easily. Oh, they did. Back to the domain entrance once again, the twins learn from Maple about her Devour ability, and that they need to clear the domain 9 more times apparently, so I'll spare you guys the hassle and get to the next part of the story. In the MTG HQ, Maple happily informs the other members that the twins have reached level 20, but the kicker is that they gained a new set of skills as a reward for clearing the domain in 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Everyone was left in awe after learning that they earned skills that doubled their damage, so it is concluded that it would be in their best interest to forge newer and stronger weapons to further buff their strength. The next morning, Maple was surprised to find only Iz and Kiramu still left in the HQ, as the others went to do whatever they needed, so Maple thought it'd be best to let Syrup keep him company on his journey. The man couldn't help but wonder about how much Maple trusted him even if he could harm the guild. Not that he planned on doing such an awful thing anyway, but the thought was always there with him. Suddenly, he notices a hidden dungeon on the horizon, so he enters it. For the time being, let's take a look at how everyone else is doing. Mei and Yui seem to be able to one-shot monsters now, but they're still as slow as Maple in a race against her turtle. Fortunately for them, Sally was around to help them out in their agility workout. Kanade managed to solve his puzzle and started figuring out how his new skills would function. Kasumi used her sword skills to trim a sheep's fleece before getting text messages from Maple, who fell into trouble. Now what did the airhead do this time that requires Kasumi's help, I wonder? Much to Kasumi and you viewers and my surprise, she got stuck inside a large ball of fleece. What is she even doing there, you may ask? She came to help with collecting resources after discovering a new spell but got stuck. Of course, Kasumi was kind enough to get her out. But Maple, who was eager to demonstrate the new skill to her friend, got herself stuck in it once more. Come to think of it, that could help get us more resources to cover impoverished kids from being cold in the winter, so that's a W, I guess. Wait, she dipped it all in poison so no enemies could approach it. Thankfully, Karma kicked in and Kasumi couldn't even get near her to save her. Instead, she was watching her with a smile on her face. Back to Kiramu, who managed to skillfully defeat the dungeon master on his own, was getting some interesting loot in the process. He was satisfied from testing it out on several monsters too. Once she got to get herself out of her dilemma, Maple was on her way back to the HQ, but she heard a sudden coughing inside the tiny passages of the plaza. Being the ever-curious she is, she followed the sound, only to find herself doing a quest for some NPCs, so she agreed to it and headed with the mother to the outside of the city. After getting the antidote, she noticed that the NPC's daughter didn't get any better, which led her to another side quest that she agreed to. God please, this reminds me of how long Genshin side quests can actually be, for crying out loud. Fortunately for me and you guys too, it turned out that Maple had the ring that the NPC requested, so she gave it away and left, and everything ended peacefully. Right. Wrong. The girl's condition actually had gotten a lot worse, and she ran away, leading to a third side quest. Following the trail of the girl, Maple and the NPC found her lying inside the Temple of Darkness, surrounded by a dark aura where a ghost came out of it. The ghost was so powerful that Maple couldn't do anything against it, but suddenly and amazingly, the monster lost thanks to the antidote that the girl drank on the first quest. Aside from this mess, Maple and the NPCs got back to the house once again where, just as Maple started thinking of what she messed up, got a fourth quest. As she accepted the quest, she ended up heading on a quest to find a bottle left on the ground. At first I thought it might contain the first milk sample my greatest ancestor went to look for, but it turned out to be the piece of the Archangel's stolen wing. Unlocking it released the Archangel, which thanked Maple for releasing her to keep on watching over the girl. And so the quest was over with the girl saved and Maple gaining a new skill. Back at the guild's HQ, Maple gathered everyone there to flex her new set, which is looking good, to be honest. Her new skill did make her even stronger as she became protected by the divinity of the Archangel. Elsewhere, Pain and the others were discussing what to do in the incoming events, singling out Maple as a source of concern. In their last meeting before the third event in MTGHQ, Maple and the boys discussed the details of the event, where they got to defeat cows and get their bells. Surprisingly, Iz made some new clothes for the girls there thanks to the amount of fleece they collected. Kanade also got his costume now, which is looking good too. As for Kiramu though, he was enjoying Syrup's wholesomeness. At the beginning of the event, everyone seemed to be off to a good start, except for Maple, who's not well suited for this kind of event unfortunately. Thankfully for her, she had her teammates to cheer for her. Once she's at the mountains, she manages to catch a bell, but trying to climb a step ahead to capture Syrup leads her to slip off the cliff to the very bottom of the mountain. After a brief episode of a panic attack, she found a coin on the ground. But as she kept on wandering to find an exit, she stumbled upon the ruins of the church from her last side quest. Curiosity got the better of her, so she entered it, only to step on some trap that turned off the lights inside, only to find a hostile dark knight that managed to overpower her, despite her best attempts to fight back. I mean, surrounding herself with fleece and getting Syrup to get bigger to fight for her, he still got even stronger and devoured her nonetheless. It was around the same time that Sally started wondering how Maple was doing. It didn't take us much to get an answer. She seemed to be chilling inside the monster's belly, consuming him from the inside and taking him down while she was at it. Well girl, you never cease to get me speechless. Simultaneously, the Kingdom of the Flame Guild was conducting its operation to gather as many cowbells, to which Mai charismatically addresses everyone, thanking them for their hard work. That impressed not just the guild members, but the Discord mods. I mean the game mods too, who are still keeping a close eye on Maple, especially after eating a demon. At the MTGHQ, the guild cheered for reaching the next level. However, Sally was still concerned about what Maple got to pull off in the event. To get to the next level, the guild needs to defeat a boss. Everyone seemed to be worried about approaching it, as it appeared strong. Except for Maple, who just advanced and used all of the new skills she gained after eating that demon. Now everyone else stood speechless at how absurd her new set of skills was. Just as she became even stronger. Now the third level of the game was as different from the previous two. Just as the city seemed more industrialized, the guild decided to split to explore more of it. But on her way, Maple found an old man in need of food and water. Once she granted him what he needed, he rewarded her with a story about the background of this city. Meanwhile, the other members keep on doing their own thing there. Now once Maple finishes hearing the story, she assumes that it's a rare quest, so she heads to where Sally is. But just as she entered a foggy area to avoid crowded skies, she nearly hit a wall that led her to fall off Syrup's back. Thankfully, this time she used her atrocity skill just in time to land safely. She found herself in the city's graveyard though. As she kept on going deeper, she found herself fighting the King of Machines who've gone bad. After pinning him down, she defeated him by corrupting his core. Or so she thought, because the schizophrenic robot gave her his power before he was consumed by his evilness and attacked her. The power bestowed on her transformed Maple into a Mobile Suit Gundam that ended up engaging in a Kamehameha battle style with her enemy. As for the outcome, of course, she emerged victorious from it. Of course, Maple couldn't help but gather her friends to flex her new absurdly powerful skills, which yet again left them with a mixed feeling of shock and excitement. Elsewhere, Pain was still worried about Maple's guild, since, in his opinion, her guild has lots of hidden talents. He was so worried that he decided to overlook the Kingdom of Flame, despite Dread and Drag's reassurances that they were not a source of worry. Since the third event is over and there's some time left before the beginning of the guild's competition, Maple and Sally decided to take the chance and relax in a calm lake, despite May and Yui almost drowning her and Sally. However, not everyone considered the same approach. Kasumi and Kiramu, for example, opted to further improve their skills by training some more, and the same thing applies to Kanade. Iz didn't sit idle either, as she kept on digging for materials to forge new weapons and armor for her friends, finding a new set of skills for her use in the process. Once they were done with their fun and left the lake, Sally noticed an unfamiliar presence around, so she called out for whoever was there to come out. And boy oh boy, what do you know? It's Frederica spying on the guild for Pain. Now Sally couldn't let Frederica walk away like that, so she suggested dueling the latter, putting their guild's intels at stake. Frederica agreed to the terms, and with that, the duel began. The fight was mostly a stalemate, where no one could make the fight reach a decisive end, so unexpectedly Frederica decided to forfeit. To fulfill her side of the deal, she did give Sally some information about Kingdom of Flame members and left. Now on their way back, each learned something new about each other and shared it with their team members. Amidst that, Kasumi remembered that it was about time the event started, so she turned on Dorazo to learn about the event's length, penalties, and of course the rules. Once Dorazo is out, Sally suggests each member's role in the event, where Maple and the twins will be on the defense. Sally, Kiramu, and Kasumi are on the offense, while Iz will be left on base as a backup. After some further training, the event finally began with a good start for Sally and her comrades, as they managed to defeat an entire guild and capture their orb with ease. Sally, despite being pleased with the turnout of this operation, left the orb with Kasumi and went ahead for further scouting. She proved to be a force to be reckoned with, as she managed to sneak through an entire guild using her superb agility to steal their orb. She didn't do that once but kept on doing it again and again. As much as that was impressive for the public, they were still rooting for the Holy Sword Guild, Pain's guild that is. As we look into them, they appear to leave only Frederica and Drag to defend their orb against a wave of enemies, as if they were Spartans in Thermopylae. Unlike the real thing, however, the two of them single-handedly defeated their enemies with ease. Elsewhere on the map, Dread noticed Sally's presence, so he engaged in battle with her after leaving his captured orb with other members. The battle was intense, where Sally was keeping up with Dread's attacks move for move, and so did Dread. It was only when Sally confirmed that he did leave that she let her guard down. Elsewhere, Marcus and Misery, members of the Kingdom of Flame, kept on defending their orb, while Mai relentlessly defeated other teams, leaving the task of capturing the orb to her teammates. This is a mistake, as Sally took down that member and stole the orb. Mai went on hot pursuit after Sally, throwing whatever she had to cut her escape, but to no avail. Mai became so frustrated that she revealed to us that she is a tsundere. Inside their base, MTG members were all there to defend their orb from intruders, to which they repelled them with ease. That night, Pain took an enemy orb on his own, while no one could get in his way, since he's a professional in this game. After crossing the bridge, he was met with Drag, who asked him how many orbs he got. Much to his surprise, Pain didn't even count, so Drag got the freedom to assume that he got around 20 of them. Despite his capability of taking down all other guilds on his own, he still believes that Maple Tree would be a tough nut to crack. Speaking of MTG, at their base, Maple was happy that they got to capture 10 orbs on the first day alone. Kasumi, despite her satisfaction, made it clear that it was still too early for them to celebrate since they aimed at reaching the top 10, and it seemed that Sally was on the same page, so she went outside on her own, devastating other guilds in her wake. Cannade followed suit shortly after. By sunrise, Sally realized that she was way too tired for now and that she needed to head back to their base to rest. But before she could move a muscle, she was surrounded by members of the Holy Sword Guild. She tried to get them off her back, but to no avail. To make matters worse, Frederica was there as well, and as the fight was taking place, she notified Maple of how dire her situation was. Despite putting up a hell of a fight, the sheer number of enemies was way too much for her to handle, and Frederica became on the verge of eliminating Sally after a long struggle. Much to her shock, however, a bird arrived. No, it's not a bird, it's a plane. No, it's Maple. Her arrival turned the situation upside down. It was around the same time that is, Kiramu and Kasumi were conducting their operation to get some orbs too, the latter of which met her match. But just as she received a warning from Mei, she got briefly distracted from her current fight. Thankfully, she managed to dodge his attacks, and even went on the offensive once she found an opening to defeat her opponent, for now. While all of these events were taking place, Mei and Yui were waiting for their comrades to be back safely, only to be met with Dread's arrival at their base. Now the twin were doing their best to keep up with him. Despite initial success in holding him back, Dread managed to take them down on his own. The twins' sacrifice didn't go in vain, however, because they bought enough time for Maple and Sally to arrive, taking down Dread with ease. Now once they all have disengaged, Mei and Yui managed to get back into the game, receiving compliments from her teammates for their efforts in defending their orbs. Now they managed to collect 22 orbs, and thanks to Sally's scouting, she managed to locate other guilds' orbs to give room for Maple, Mei and Yui to go on the offensive this time, while she takes a rest after being worn out. Now Maple's arrival became a game changer for MTG, as they started one-shotting other guilds without much effort. It didn't take them much time to get through the Kingdom of Flame's defense too, much to Marcus' shock. Now that Misery and he were the last major defensive lines for their orb left, they tried to hold Maple for as much as they could, but their efforts were futile. Thankfully for them, Mai arrived just in time before Maple could do anything. Now for the first time in a while, Maple struggled to defend against Mai's attacks. Now that the latter seemed to start figuring out her plan, she tried to pacify Maple so she could take down the twins first. Now of course, Maple had so much more to tricks up her sleeve, so she used syrup to keep her friends safe while she tried to take down Mai. The fighting there was intense, so much so that focused attacks on Maple barely scratched her. Suddenly, Maple got a stroke of luck as other members of Mai's guild rushed in to help. This was a mistake, as Maple was able to use Syrup's attacks to fend them off. That gave Maple room to get close enough to cast Hydra and inflict some serious damage on her enemies. But the battle still got back to its original stalemate. For that, Mai had to get Marcus and Misery to distract Maple for as long as possible to cast her ultimate skill, a Prison of Flame. Seeing how precarious her situation is, Maple decides to go for broke and transform into her Optimus Prime mode, leaving Mai and the boys in utter disbelief. Despite their best efforts, Mai and her guild were no match for the might of Maple. The former managed to remain unharmed, but since she was out of options, she decided to go for broke and take Maple down with her. Now, of course, that proved to be a futile effort because Maple's vitality level stonks. Unfortunately for her, Mai's guild took their orb away, but just as she considered going on hot pursuit after Mai, the twins suggested going after other guilds to get their orbs instead. I genuinely am surprised that these two are bullies. Now back to Mai. Once she's all alone, she starts crying for losing to Maple. She was whining over her loss to Maple. At first, she got hold of herself in front of Marcus and Misery, but once she heard that Maple didn't even get a scratch, she ran away and kept on whining again. Before the end of the day, the gang meets up and they discuss what they did. Sadly, Kasumi noticed that their pacing had fallen off a little, so Sally came off with another composition for them to perform better for what was left of the day. So Sally and the twins were going ham on other guilds on the offense. Kanade and Iz were performing well in their defense for their orb too, while Maple, well, she took Kiramu and Kasumi with her to plunge on their enemies head on. The results were impressive, but the tensions are still at an all-time high since most of the small and medium guilds have almost disappeared, which makes clashes between the big guilds inevitable at this point. And it seems that Pain was also hot on the money. Just as they were preparing themselves to proceed with their plan, Sally was taken aback by the presence of Dread, Frederica, and of course Pain, who couldn't help but express his thirst for fighting Maple. And with that, the fighting began. The Holy Sword members were so powerful that they pinned Maple Tree on the defense instantly. Despite the latter's best effort to keep up with their enemies, they couldn't help Maple from receiving a fatal injury from Pain. Is this going to be the end of Maple? Episode 12. Fortunately, Maple survived this lethal attack with 1 HP, but despite her best effort to protect her friends, Pain still had the upper hand, so much so that he one-shot her. While Maple is still struggling with Pain, Kiramu has his hands full with protecting Mai and Yui from Drag's attacks. Before they got to conduct their plan, Frederica stopped Kasumi from getting anywhere near Maple. As for Kanade, who took the orb with him, managed to throw a smoke screen to distract Dread as he escaped. But Pain came in to eliminate him. Just as he was about to use all of his might to defeat Maple, she caught him in the open with one of her cannons. Much to everyone's surprise, Pain was standing still, preparing for an even more powerful attack against Maple. However, Maple had one trick up her sleeve as she pulled off her atrocity skill to transform into a demon, putting an end to Pain and the rest of his guild members savagely. With their victory claimed, Kanade and Iz were allowed to be back once again. Unfortunately for them, all of their trump cards are out in the open now, and their previous plan is in jeopardy. They agreed to go with everything they got over other guilds, or else they'll be left behind. That night, MTG conducted a massive raid on other guilds with Maple at the vanguard to wipe them out and secure their lead. Despite Frederica's frustration, Pain kept his cool and admitted his loss in good spirits. Their saving grace was the fact that they lost no orbs. It was around that time that a guard came to Pain to inform him of the ongoing details. As they kept on heading to their next destination, Sally noticed chaos was taking place nearby. Assuming that it's the Kingdom of Flame that is behind this ongoing mess, she asked Maple to change direction. And she was right in her guess. It was indeed Mai that was wiping out another guild to ensure that they were still on track. Despite their success, they received information that Maple was heading towards them. Now invigorated with this news, she rallied her entire guild behind her. But the moment she came in front of Maple's demonic form, she stood in utter horror as she destroyed everything around her and left. Just like that. Now Mai and her goons were so confused over why did she let them survive. Just as they kept on wreaking havoc, they noticed that the Holy Sword Guild was on the same page as theirs too. So the former decided to press their attack by cloning Maple, leaving both Kingdom of Flame and Holy Sword in awe of the abomination that was taking place. By sunrise, Maple was standing as if she were a robot from Evangelion. Realizing that the event is pretty much over 2 days ahead of schedule with 6 guilds left on the top 10, the Discord mods decided to finally call off the event and reward toward the winning guilds. As for what to do with Maple though, they reluctantly agreed to leave her be since she became a brand that attracted more new people to come and grind the game. Back to real life, Kaede and Risa were glad of their accomplishment in this event against much stronger opponents. The latter couldn't help but remind her friend that she still needs to focus on her studies, because if she fails, then they will lose their guild master. On the next day, Maple kicked off a party with other members to celebrate reaching 3rd place. Much to Kiramu's surprise though, Mai's guild and Pain's were there too. Now of course, there's no ongoing battle between them, so they kept their differences aside and enjoyed the party and watched a highlight of the last event. Maple was too shy from all the compliments she received, so she claimed that she was only playing normally, much to everyone's disbelief. That concludes the anime recap. If you'd like me to continue the series, let me know down below and I'm out.